Bye, Mom.
He's going to play in this weather. Why did you let him go? He might fall ill. And if he doesn't go out for practice, how will he win more trophies? To protect our family from illness-causing germs during the rainy season, we use Dettol soap every day.
Dettol with germ defense gives you protection. Rainy season brings a lot of germs, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol Show.
Join us to stop crude oil and product theft at production sites, on the pipeline, at terminals, at the depots, on vessels, at refineries. Help stop crude oil and product theft. Report infringements to www.stopcrudetheft.com. You can also validate genuine purchase at validate.stopcrudetheft.com. Please report and be rewarded. This message is from the Nigerian National Petroleum Company.
Every morning is an opportunity to take your hustle to the next level. Every morning is one day closer to your ambition. So, make every morning count. Cup after cup, morning after morning. Start strong, finish strong. Nescafe.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youth, let's build our nation together.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
The Nigerian Electronic Media Content Exhibition and Awards, NMCA 2022 is born. It is the biggest gathering of TV, radio, online, film and all forms of electronic media content in one place to celebrate and do the business of content for 3 days in August 29, 30 and 31, 2022 at Radisson Blue Hotel, Ikeja, Lagos, Nigeria. Register now to attend at www.nemcia.net. NMCA is brought to you by MCON in collaboration with BMA, collocating with NIFS, proudly supported by media support by NMCA 2022. One place, 3 days. Content is king, always.
Are you aware that your perfect family may be under threat by germs? Germs can cause infectious disease. These infectious diseases are amongst the biggest killers of adults and children. Illness-causing germs are everywhere. In unclean bathing water, on your clothes, dirty surfaces, on cuts and wounds. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 capsule. In your bathing water, for your laundry, for surface cleaning, for first aid, and to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure.
You're welcome back. And now to discuss ending malaria in Nigeria, let's join our correspondent. Here is a background report by Ekene Njuli.
100,000 Nigerians were reportedly killed by malaria in 2021, while 61 million others suffered afflictions from the disease. This figure is a clear depiction of the burden of malaria disease in the country. Nigeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania and Mozambique are said to account for over half of all malaria deaths globally. Behind these figures are children under the age of 5 who are the most vulnerable group, accounting for over 80% of all malaria deaths in Africa. The good news is that malaria is preventable, treatable and curable, and the global target is to end the disease by 2030. The National Malaria Elimination Program, Rollback Malaria Program, and Global Malaria Elimination Program are some of the global and local efforts towards fighting the disease. Apparently, eliminating the disease will take sustained local funding and strong political commitment at the federal and state levels. The recent inauguration of the End Malaria Council in Nigeria by President Buhari is hoped to be the much-needed game-changer, as its program is designed to remove operational bottlenecks and resource gaps in the fight against malaria.
The successful implementation of the Council agenda will result in improvement in the quality of life, health, and well-being of Nigerians by providing impetus for malaria elimination and by saving about 687 billion naira nationally, which is the estimated economic burden of malaria for 2022. The savings could increase to 2 trillion naira in 2030. A concerted strategy to tackle malaria, therefore, has both public health as well as socio-economic benefits for Nigeria.
How far has Nigeria gone in meeting the 2030 targets of ending malaria? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be speaking on these and other issues around the fight to end malaria in Nigeria.
And we're now to discuss ending malaria in Nigeria. Let me first introduce here in Abuja studio Dr. Perpetua Uhomobi. Am I right?
Yes.
All right. Uhomobi is the director and national coordinator, National Malaria Elimination Program, Federal Ministry of Health, and the secretary of the Nigeria End Malaria Council, NEMC. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
Thank you very much. Also joining us here is Dr. Isaac Akuma Abuja, public health specialist. Glad to have you here this morning.
Good morning, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
Thank you so very much, and good to really have you to discuss this very important topic and very important disease. But in the meantime, it's better we notify you that we'll be expecting Professor Abdulsalam Inesidi, Pioneer Director General, Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Provost, College for Health Sciences, University of Africa. He'll be joining us from Kano anytime we're able to get the connection with it. Let's get started and see what's there in it for us this morning as far as eliminating malaria is concerned. I want to start with you, Dr. Isaac Abuja. Looking at malaria, it's a common thing, it's a common disease, it's all over the place, and it doesn't seem to be so much of a threat to anybody anymore because everybody knows it and everybody feels it, everybody carries it along. But the hype about it is strong enough to ring some bell everywhere else, especially in official quarters. When on Tuesday the president, inaugurated NEMC, it's a big thing. And World Organization dishing out, figures here and there every now and then. Looking at these two extremes, malaria at the center, why is it so?
Well, it is so because in Nigeria, for example, where we are and what we're discussing this morning, malaria is one of the most common or endemic diseases that we have in the country. There's hardly any adult in the country and also including children, who does not have at least a bout of malaria in a year. Some have up to 3 to 4 to 5 times in a year. And during each of those episodes of malaria, lots of losses are incurred. Financial losses because you have to buy drugs. People who work have to be absent from work. And so they lose, and also the employers also lose. Productivity goes down. Poverty level goes up, because if you have, for example, 10,000 naira for you to spend in a month, and you spend 2,000 of it to treat yourself for malaria, you've already reduced your level of purchase, because the money that you would use for other things would no longer be there for you. And the country at large spends a lot of money buying malaria drugs, as you know, both privately and publicly, in hospitals, in homes, in pharmacies, everywhere you go. There's hardly any pharmacy that does not have an anti-malaria drug on the shelf. And each of them is sold as if it is food. And so we are losing a lot of money. We are losing a lot of strength. We are losing a lot of lives. That's even the most worrisome one. The introduction that was given, you heard that we have over 200,000 deaths last year alone. That's a lot of number. And it is also estimated, from what the president just said too, that by 2030, we'll be spending, or the burden of malaria will take about 3 trillion naira. Assuming that the inflation rate is what it is today now, I'm sure it will go up. But even if it is what it is today, to spend 3 trillion naira on one problem of the country is a lot of money. And we have a lot of problems. Even within the health sector, malaria is only one. We have others.
Yes, exactly. We have others, and they keep, piling up all the time. But Dr. Perpetua, they said the malaria control program has been in existence since 1948. The question is, why are we still talking about ending malaria and not celebrating the total eradication of it, like other countries around the world?
Well, thank you very much. Malaria, like you rightly said, is still a major public health problem in Nigeria, because Nigeria tops the countries with the highest burden of malaria globally. And of course, there are many things that are responsible for this, despite the fact that the National Malaria Program under the Federal Ministry of Health has put in measures, with the support of our bank malaria partners over the years, to tackle the problem of malaria in Nigeria. It remains a problem because it's not just a public health problem, it's also a social, economic, and a developmental problem. So you cannot address malaria alone if you don't take care of these other factors. So it requires a multi-sectoral approach to arresting and eliminating malaria in Nigeria. So we have to look at the environment. Environmental management is very key. And we have to look at housing, how people living, particularly in the rural area. You see what we have seen over the years with data is that malaria disproportionately affects the poor because of, socioeconomic issues, their environment, their housing, and other things that predispose them to malaria. Like he said, 2 or 3 episodes a year, and malaria also increases decreases their productivity and increase their economic losses, because absenteeism from work, taking care of sick children, out-of-pocket expenses, and all that. So it's unless we tackle it holistically, it's going to still remain a problem. We have made significant gains over the years. For instance, in the past 20 years, more than 200 million deaths have been averted. The burden of malaria in terms of prevalence in children under 5 has decreased from 42% in 2010 to 23% in 2018. That was the last demographic and health survey national survey that was conducted. And recently we conducted another malaria indicator survey, and we are still waiting for the final report. So there have been some significant decrease because the Rollback Malaria Partnership and the government of Nigeria have put in interventions that have helped us to bring down this challenge. But part of the problem has been funding, because we have not had that opportunity to reach every part of the country, because the whole country, there's no one spared. Everybody's susceptible to malaria in Nigeria. So we're talking of a population of over 200 million people that need to have access to these critical interventions for prevention, diagnosis, treatment for malaria. And we have not been able to achieve that, to reach every nook and cranny of the country. And because of funding, the program has rolled out interventions that we know are impactful, that have worked in other countries. But the challenge, okay, we have in terms of prevention, we have use of long-lasting nets, insecticidal treated nets. That is one. We have chemo prevention in pregnant women, in which we give a medication which is called sulfadoxine pyrimethamine to pregnant women when they are pregnant, to protect them and their unborn children from malaria, because we know that malaria also affects mostly pregnant women and children under 5, and we have many of the deaths are recorded in those two vulnerable groups. So we have intervention that provide these antenatal services. And then for children under 5, we have what we call the seasonal malaria chemo prevention, also giving medications during the peak transmission season. You see, in the country, because of our climatic condition, most part of the country have this rainfall pattern that, of course, also promotes the breeding of mosquitoes. So malaria is mostly the highest transmission season is during that rainy season. So this chemo prevention tends to target children under 5 to give them this mass drug in population from household to household in those areas that have very short rainfall season between July and October, and that's where you have more cases and deaths. And so we target children in those part of the country with these drugs to protect them from getting malaria when that season comes. And then even if they don't end up having the severe malaria that leads to death. So those are the prevention on the prevention aspect. Of course, we also promote the use of personal protective devices, beyond the nets, and indoor residual spraying is also another key intervention. But we have not been able to have full coverage of all this intervention to every part of the country where it's needed. So that has been a challenge. Unless we achieve that universal coverage of this intervention, whether you are giving mass distribution of nets to states, everybody, or you are using these drugs at health facilities and all this, unless you are able to do that to everybody that needs it, you can't make that significant progress that needs to be done to effectively tackle the problem of malaria in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Perpetua. We've just gotten signals that our Kano connection is ready, talking about Professor Abdul Salam Nasidi, Pioneer Director General, Nigeria Center for Disease Control, and Provost College of Health Sciences, University of Africa. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, Professor Abdul Salam.
Good morning, and good morning, Nigerians. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get started. Let's get moving on and see what exactly we could get from you as regards malaria as we look towards the eradication of malaria in Nigeria. We've been talking about, laying the background from the beginning. I don't know whether you've been following this, but all the same, let's get your perspective of this disease, which has, been so common and so dangerous to, almost every other person in Nigeria and in the tropics here. Tell us more about what you know about this disease that, seem to be a friend and, of course, an enemy at the same time, being with us for quite a long time.
As you rightly said, it's a friend and an enemy because As a friend, it helped us to protect our continent, our people from the colonial masters. There's no disease they feared, like malaria and yellow fever. So at least kept them off a little bit and help us to do the fight. But it's an enemy. It kills more of our children than any other disease and any other, event that could afflict us. And therefore, it becomes one of the most important public health issue that must be addressed by any serious country in Africa. If you want to address the issue of development, it's a disease that not just has a public health importance, but as Dr. Perpetua said, it has such a serious, economic and developmental implications. But I don't want to repeat what they have said. We are just very happy that we are now equipped with so many tools that actually we can use nationally, internationally to get the malaria disease eliminated. So we are not just talking of just controlling it or this and that, but to eliminate it completely, meaning, we take care of the parasite that causes the disease and take care of the vector that transmits the disease, and also take care of the disease itself when somebody has acquired the parasite. So apart from the vaccines, which more than 1 million African children have received in the high transmission countries like Ghana, Malawi and Kenya, that experiment has shown that we are now equipped with a very effective vaccine that can go a long way to at least reduce severity and deaths caused by malaria, particularly in the under 5s. That trial that was conducted since the year 2019 has shown that we have a very effective tool. There are other effective tools that are already working in many countries, and we believe if those tools are deployed, in addition to what Dr. Perpetua said, we will be able to eliminate malaria by the year 2020. One of it, actually, the replacement of the mosquitoes that transmit the parasite. There are experiments going on now in Colombia and other countries, and some African countries are about to start trying it, whereby the Anopheles and the known mosquitoes that treat this parasite can be replaced. They are now growing a mosquito that carries a bacteria that, when released into the environment, will be circulating. It will displace the mosquitoes that actually transmit the parasite, but will not be able to transmit that parasite. That is very effective in not only against malaria, but that method is now effective against other diseases transmitted by other mosquitoes like dengue, like yellow fever, etc. So an effective tool is in the making, is already in trial, is working, and we believe it will join the tool we are now using, the chemotherapy and the vaccine. Then another one is also on the mosquito. Do you know that mosquitoes like sugar more than you and I? They like to leak sugar. So when they come for our blood, they actually get their energy from the sugar in our blood and so on and so forth. So some innovative scientists have found out that we can create a bait, just like the impregnated treated nets. We can create a bait that will have sugar, in it, and that sugar will be mixed with any insecticide. And the mosquitoes, you can't believe it, when they come to the community, they will fly to where the sugar is. They smell the sugar, and they smell one scent in a particular flower. So they are now mixing the scent, the sugar, and the insecticide, and the mosquitoes go and feed on that sugar. And believe it or not, the effectiveness is so high that they die quickly. And where these experiments also carried out have reduced malaria transmission, dengue transmission by 77%. So we have effective tools that by God's grace, by the year 2030, we should be able to actually, work hard to eradicate or eliminate malaria parasite from circulation.
Going to stay with you. I actually, and I'm sure everybody in Nigeria today got an education. Sugar. It's unbelievable, actually. No, it's still a long way to eradicating malaria in Nigeria. And there's this saying that experts say that apart from government doing its bit, we need attitudinal change here in Nigeria. When people hear vaccine, it's something they run away with from. So what do you think, and how do you think Nigerians need to know that malaria is a disease that kills, and malaria is a disease that can incapacitate a person? If they get the vaccine, they'll be well and they can function better.
Actually, that's the first tool, and I'm happy you brought it up. From this point of view, it is a role of the women, particularly the rural women, that can make it happen. One, to even accept the vaccine, to deploy all these tools that are available, and so on and so forth. So there's a very big movement now funded by Bill Gates, whereby we say, okay, we have the tools, but how do you really deploy the tools for it to be effective? And there's a lady in Cambridge, Kenya Medical Research Institute, Dr. Muhai. She is now working on seeing that areas where you actually mobilize the women, especially the traditional, the local women, to be in charge of this eradication elimination program, and you have more than 80% effectiveness. So you are absolutely, health promotion, using the right people, the traditional rulers, the traditional healers, we shouldn't ignore them, but first and foremost the female, the women population in the rural areas that are with the children. Who stays more with the children under 5? Is the women, is the mothers who stay more around the areas where they will play, they will feed, and all this is the women. So actually, if you deploy, so you use the deployment of these tools through effective mobilization of women and the women population, those communities are usually, being able to control not just malaria but other diseases that you can use similar tools to eradicate. So in many African countries where, now in Kenya, in the community where she conducted the experiment, she found out that using the same tools, the same quantity, the same quality, but now getting the women involved and getting them to do the job, you will get more than almost 75 to 90% effectiveness in getting the limitation or mitigation or the spread of the transmission of the virus, of the parasite from the vector. So this is the other thing that I believe you are right. Take for instance the COVID-19 vaccine and the routine immunization, and the moment any community start rejecting any vaccine at all, it affects other vaccines. So it is very important when you're introducing a new vaccine, that malaria vaccine, COVID vaccine, we must develop new strategies that will make people to have confidence in the new tools we are bringing in. If not, if they reject any of the new tools, it affects the other tools we are using before, like the childhood vaccines, immunization vaccines, and so on and so forth. And then it sets us back from what we have attained from public health point of view. So it has to be a holistic strategy. And then finally is the role of the private sector. We are very happy to see that all this big move to get malaria eliminated, which will be the second most important public health achievement after the smallpox eradication, is now driven by the private sector, the corporate organizations. And you are all aware that Bill Gates is putting almost more than 30% of his profits into this fight. And we are proud of our own Dangote that is now championing this. Virtually every Nigerian billionaire is involved, every Nigerian corporate organizations are involved. Government alone can't do it. But coming together, I think, and empowering those who do it properly, the women, will be able to achieve this, our target to eliminate malaria by 2030.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Nosidi. Let's come back to the studio here and then hear from Dr. Isaac Okumba. Doctor, you've heard what Professor said about the holistic approach to the eradication of malaria. And that's not to say that it's all encompassing, looking at the attitude and the behavior of our people here in Nigeria, talking about the environment, talking about our hygiene, procedures and methods, talking about how we really approach issues of even the ordinary gutter by the side of our, by in front of our doors and houses. China has eradicated that malaria. Some smaller countries in Africa have also done that. But it seems as if we're still moving, and some progress have been made, just like Dr. Perpetua said. But still, it's a long way to go. Looking at the poverty level of our people, our own way of life, and our resistance to certain, approaches to medication, like the vaccine my colleague just mentioned. Do you see us meeting that target by 2030?
I think so. I don't think it is impossible. It depends on several things. One, the money that we need to do what we need to do. Two, the change in attitude, and I think my colleague has already spoken about that. We must, and Professor Nasidi too, we must be prepared to change our attitude and to believe that we can do what seems to be impossible. For example, the question that you've asked, whether we will be able to get rid of malaria, get rid of mosquitoes, get rid of this problem holistically by the year 2030. It looks like it is impossible because it's only 8 years away from now. But it is not. It is possible. If we have the will, and we have the commitment, and we have the resources, we will be able to do that. But meanwhile, let me talk about something that we can do in between now and the target or the goal date of 2030. Right now, we are spending so much money on anti-malarials. And one of the things that Nigeria has potential and should have been doing all these years before now is to produce the anti-malaria by ourselves. If you know the quantity and the amount of money that we spend buying anti-malarials from India, from China, even from other countries, you will be amazed and you will be surprised. And you will say, why don't we do this by ourselves? Why are we not producing these anti-malarials by ourselves? Why are we buying them from other countries? We have the potentials. We tried in the 80s. We tried in the 90s. And I remember at the beginning of 2006, 2004, around that time, there was this move for us to get pharmaceutical companies to come and produce anti-malaria, especially ACT, artemisinin combination therapy. We have Artemisia and the plant, from which you get the ingredient to make the anti-malaria that we're using now in Nigeria, and it is grown very well, very, very well in Nigeria. The question is, why are we not using the plant to produce our own anti-malaria? If we have the political will and we have the resources, financial way, where I'm talking about now, human we have, we should be able to produce anti-malarials and cut down the amount of money that we're using to buy anti-malarials from other countries, which is also an economic loss. That's something we can do in between. Also, even the impregnated insecticides that Madam talked about earlier, we were producing them at some point. All of a sudden, for some reason that some of us don't understand, they have stopped producing. And I think it's only 1 or 2 plants that are producing now in Nigeria. They were up to 3, 4, 5 at the time that we started with the noise that we can prevent malaria by using nets, and everybody, we made sure that during antenatal clinics, nets were provided, in some cases free, in some cases at discounted prices. But all of a sudden, you don't even see people using them and talking about them as much as they should, as if the problem has gone. But the problem is still with us. So attitude is important, consistency is important, focus is also important. If you notice, every time we have a new authority, either as president or as Minister of Health or something, there's a change of focus. Sometimes to the detriment of what is already ongoing. Yes, we have emerging challenging problems, like in the last 2 years, COVID, for example, which we never thought about, that came on us, and for which we needed to attack. I agree with that. But that shouldn't be at the expense of what is endemic, what is already with us. As long as we have this malaria problem with us, for example, I've just taken one, there are others, we should be focusing on those things plus the new ones. And that's what Professor Nasidi just talked about. And that is part of the holistic approach that we are talking about. So that you don't look at malaria as just a single disease on its own. You look at it in combination with other diseases. Just like we were preaching during the COVID. If you have other problems like diabetes or hypertension or any other form of cancer, for example, and so on, and you have COVID, your chances of dying was higher. Therefore, you are not only focusing on the emerging problem of COVID, you should also be focusing on other problems that are endemic, which could add or exacerbate the problem that is coming. And by the way, we don't even know between now and 2030 which other new disease would come.
Hopefully not because of...
Yeah, we are not praying for it, but don't rule anything out.
Yes.
In the last few months, we've been talking about monkeypox. And there are others. And there's a possibility that more problems, diseases would come. So it is very essential that we try to get a good hold of the ones that we have now, treat them very well, provide a good base from where we can take off in controlling and curing whatever might come later. Take, for example, if we didn't have anything at all in terms of laboratory alone, when COVID came, we would have been in a worse situation than we did. Yeah. We had something that helped us to take advantage of, and we took off. So, taking off again from what Professor Nasidi just said, it is important to link one of our problems to the other and with the other, so that our solutions will also be linked. And this is the reason why if you go to the Federal Ministry of Health or the states, for example, in immunization program, there's a combination. At the beginning, it was only vaccines that they were providing. At some point in time, we added vitamin A. And in some places, they're also doing deworming. That is to say, if you save a child from malaria, say a 3-year-old from malaria, and that child is malnourished, the child could still die because it's only one wing of the problem. There are others. So this holistic approach is important, and between now and the target date, and while we are focusing on these new methods of controlling malaria or eliminating malaria, as long as the problem is with us, what is it that we can do now that should help us save our money, reduce our increase our productivity, reduce the burden that we have? And one of the things that we can do is to produce anti-malarials by ourselves, and also to try and produce the vaccines that we are looking for from other countries. We should not be buying these vaccines when they are available. We should be part of the research. We should be part of the production so that we can benefit from
Dr. Isaac, most of the time people talk about these diseases. The focus is mostly on, the curative aspect. The preventive seem to be given, lesser attention, talking about how to prevent it completely and, don't have to get it at all. But the curative seem to be the focus and the priority. I don't know. Why can't we shift, attention really and give much greater attention to the preventive than the curative?
I don't quite agree with you on that. I think we have the director here from the Federal Ministry of Health, and one of the things she talked about is prevention. And one of the most of what we are talking about now, including the vaccination, is prevention. Our focus is not necessarily on a curative aspect. It is important.
But when we talk about manufacturing the drugs and things like that,
yes,
shifting basis, really.
Yes, I agree. I agree. The reason is because much that we would want to be able to prevent this disease in totality, it is not possible.
Okay.
The reality is that it's not possible. while I may succeed in convincing you to sleep under your net, to make sure that you fumigate your house, and so on, is it possible to do it for all the houses in the country? And do you think it is possible for us to be able to really achieve it? If it were, by now malaria would have been something of the past.
Indeed, Dr. Agzik, you have really made a point there. Let's now come to Dr. Perpetua. In as much as we're talking about progress, let's talk about the clog in the wheel of progress in eradicating malaria, which is self-medication.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much for bringing that up. Like you mentioned, initially when I mostly talked about the prevention aspect, but then you also have the diagnosis and treatment, that's the case management aspect of it. And that case management is also very important because you have to be sure that you are treating malaria, and that means test before treatment. So our people have to have that attitudinal change. So when you suspect that you have malaria, rather than self-medicating, we are promoting that people have to seek care. Go to the nearest health facility, ask for a test, and we have different types of tests. We have the rapid test that you can get the result within 15 to 20 minutes with the rapid test kits. Then you have the microscopy, of course, they take to the lab, it takes a few hours. But you should demand for a test. Whether you are going to the nearby community pharmacist or the patent medicine vendor dealers or in the hospital, you should demand for a test. Don't assume that you have malaria, because not all fevers are malaria. And the more and more you make progress in bringing down the prevalence of malaria in a country, the more you begin to have fevers that are not due to malaria. So people should not assume that once they have fever, because most of these illnesses present with the same symptoms. Even COVID that we're talking about, it's still the same fever, headache, body pains and all that initially, at the initial stage. Pneumonia, diarrhea, diseases, many, they all have similar symptoms. So rather than people say, oh, I know myself, I know that when I feel like this is malaria, you go to the nearest chemist, give me anti-malaria. So we as Nigerians have to have that attitudinal change. Demand for a test, and when it is positive, only then should you take an ACT, and that's the recommended treatment. Chloroquine has been banned because it's not effective anymore. Monotherapy, just taking artesunate or any of these monotherapies, has been banned by the National Council on Health. So there's a combination therapy, and that's the artemisinin-based combination therapy for malaria, particularly for Nigeria, because that's the type, the plasmodium parasite. That's the one that is effective. Over the years, we've had resistance. Why did we have resistance? It's because of this issue of self-medication. That is what it is. And now, artemisinin-based combination therapy is the only choice we have now. And if people begin to abuse it, and then we begin to see resistance even with this, then we are in trouble. Because you can see that in other countries like Southeast Asia, there's beginning to be resistance to ACTs. So we are tracking it nationally in the program, through our therapeutic efficacy studies that we do yearly in different sites across the country to make sure that it is still effective. And so far, all our results show that it is still effective. So, but then it can only remain so if we are not abusing it. So people have to desist from self-medication, make sure that it's a positive malaria case that you are being treated with ACTs.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Perpetua. Professor Lesidi, on a final note, let's hear from you now. As we really earlier said, if China could eradicate malaria, and some countries in Africa can still do that, and some countries, as you mentioned, are making efforts towards, doing that. What do we need to do differently in Nigeria, apart from these efforts that have been mentioned, especially individually and collectively, in order to see to it that this directive by the president, that elimination of malaria should be done within that time, and of course, even if need be before that time, which is about 7 years to come, although not too long a time. What do we need to do differently?
Well, as you rightly said, Other countries have done it. Actually, the first country to control malaria, eradicate it, was Russia. Immediately after the revolution, they brought workable, strategies that, made it impossible for the parasites, to even acquire for the vectors, mosquitoes to acquire the parasite after they've bitten human. That is through chemotherapy, as Dr. Perpetua said. If you can get at a given area or a community within a given time, and you give everybody a particular anti-malarial therapy, and you bring down the circulating malaria parasite in the humans, within a short period of time, the vectors that will be, even though they will be biting humans, but they won't get the parasite to suck in and transmit anymore. So that is the method used by Russia. In China, and the other countries, and India has done a lot, is to combine this same chemotherapy and effective chemotherapy and then vector control. One old Chinese professor woke up and found out that artemisinin could do the job, and they said, okay, why don't we give this artemisinin to large volume of people, whether you have malaria, you don't have malaria, everybody drink it, take it for a particular period of time, maybe 2 weeks, the period of circulation of this parasite in the mosquito. After attaining 2-3 cycles, and the people that are to be bitten by these mosquitoes continue to be victims, they will become free of the parasite. So even if the mosquitoes now bite them, they will not carry the parasites anymore. So that's a combination therapy strategy. In Africa, what we are left with is what Dr. Koja said. We have to first and foremost, concentrate on doing it ourselves. All these countries that I mentioned, all the tools they use in fighting the malaria, they produce it themselves. They made it themselves. It was at cost. They could bear the cost. But we, virtually 80 to 90% of everything we need, to eliminate this malaria, all this stock we're making, all this, we're establishing, we have to import them. And this is a tragedy. It's not good for Africa. It's not good for this thing. You said other countries in Africa have done it. They did it and then it came back again. So it's now very clear that it has to be global. So you have to do it in a combined manner, the way the end malaria program is being promoted worldwide. For us to be able to have all the tools we need to do the fight, then to be able to have the capacity to produce those tools ourselves, so that we shall not be dependent in case this we have a reversal of our successes. So it is important to not immediate elimination. Definitely it will take time, and we can do it by that 2030. But to say within this period, between now and that 2030, can we really reduce the impact? Can we mitigate the impact of the malaria parasite on humans in Africa and other places? What do I mean by that? Can we reduce severity, so that even if you have malaria, it's not severe, you don't go into coma, you don't suffer some complications? And then can we reduce the death, particularly in the under 5? This is achievable, and that's what we should start concentrating on immediately. And already, I'm sure Dr. Perpetua will agree with me that Nigeria has made big progress, because we were one time almost 60% of all malaria cases in the world, but now those figures are changing. And if we can come down to putting most effective strategy, holistic combined strategy, not just chemotherapy, not just vector control, but mobilization and targeting elimination or control of other diseases that are transmitted similarly, then you will have a strategy that will reduce your cost. For instance, if you can reduce and control the vectors that transmit malaria, and then the ones that transmit yellow fever, dengue fever, which is already causing problem in Nigeria. We didn't have dengue before in Africa. It was first introduced through tire, importation of tire, 1987, 1989, through Delta State. we detected this, and you can't believe it. We have been tracking this effect.
Okay, Prof. Thank you so much, Abdulsalam Nasiri. I'm afraid we're running short of time. We've got to call it quits on this segment of the program because we have another topic to discuss after the break. We thank you so much, Professor Abdulsalam Nasiri. Nasiri is a pioneer Director General, Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Provost, College of Health Sciences, University of Africa. Thank you so much. Dr. Isaac Okuma, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for being part of this program this morning.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Dr. Perpetua, Director and National Coordinator, National Malaria Elimination Program, Federal Minister of Health, and the Secretary of the Nigeria and Malaria Council. It's our pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your insight.
Pleasure to be here.
It is Good Morning Nigeria. We have another topic to talk to later right after the break. Why won't you stay back for it?
The ever-busy ancient city of Onitsha is a commercial hub with millions of commuters seamlessly linking other states daily for business, leisure, and other purposes. To upscale its road network, the construction of a 1.6-kilometer-long second Niger Bridge, including a 10.3-kilometer highway furnished with other infrastructure, has been in motion by the federal government. This project will ease congestion on the existing 56-year-old Onitsha Bridge and boost the economic capacity of the state as it easily connects to other parts of the country. The completion of the world-class second Niger Bridge Onitsha will be one of the many proud moments of the state, its people, Nigerians, and foreign investors. Onitsha, which hosts the largest market in Africa, is geared up to boast of an impressive road network. Once again, these moments are made alive by the federal government, and it is deserving of all the applause.
We've been trying our best to contain the situation, and in our operations we've been able to make a lot of recoveries. We've been able to also arrest suspects that are involved in this kind of activities, and we've been able to also recover particularly arms and ammunition from those who are carrying it unlawfully and disturbing the peace of the people. But generally, our morale in the Nigerian police is always guided by our commitment to do what we have sworn to do. Peace and security must be looked into as a priority by all, to look at security as the business of all of us.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Dialogue, empathy, love and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
Our pastors, our imams, in every church, in every mosque, please realize that in the course of praying for peaceful and transparent elections, we all have duties beyond prayers. If we want a stable society before, during, and after the elections, what should you be saying to those that worship with you? All Sundays and all Fridays, you are saddled with the responsibility of bringing up good generations. It is therefore your duty to both man and God to ensure peace all the time, no matter about elections alone. People talk to people and people listen. Talk to your followers. Make them listen to ensure peaceful 2023 elections. This message from the National Orientation Agency.
You're welcome back. Now, rethinking commitment, rebuilding relationships, renewing mindsets, and restoring trust to build a new Nigeria for Nigerians. How possible is it? Well, this is where the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, NIPRS, Citizen Summit is putting together. And to discuss the summit, let me first introduce in our Abuja studio Mukhtar Zubairu Saraju, President and Chairman of Council, Nigeria Institute of Public Relations, NIPR. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, and good morning, viewers.
And also joining us in the studio is Dr. Ike Melia. I hope I got that right. He's the chairman, MIPR National Summit Committee. Good to have you all. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
A pleasure to have you join us.
Good morning. Okay, thank you. Welcome, gentlemen, once again. Mukhtar Zubair Sirajo. Rethinking commitment, rebuilding relationships, renewing mindsets, and restoring trust, running to birth a new Nigeria for Nigerians. That's what you want to take as a business between Tuesday and Wednesday when you convene the citizens of Nigeria to a summit. Break it down.
Well, that's been always our business, but that's what we want to showcase between Tuesday and Wednesday. Let me take you down memory lane. I think it's a good step to start with. You and I am sure, grew up into a Nigeria that was a lot more cohesive, a lot more united, a lot more vibrant, a lot more friendly, a lot less hostile. A Nigeria in which relationships were based on the gelling of chemistries between people without asking unnecessary questions of tribal inclination, the other person's religious belief, his incidental place of origin. I mean, we just jailed as Nigerians, and you felt free to go to wherever you wanted to without any let or hindrance. This was the Nigeria that we grew up into, and this is a Nigeria that we believe is the ideal. But is it the Nigeria that we have today? That is not it. Now, the public relations profession has at the core of its mandate relationship building, even where it doesn't exist, and relationship mending where it cracks. The Nigerian Institute of Public Relations became worried at the kind of nosedive that relationships and trusts have sunk into between and among our people. Not just between and among the people, from so many fronts. Between the government and the people, among the people themselves, between the component units, to such an extent that we began to feel the fabrics that have held us together as a people are being stretched too thin. They were being threatened. And how were we doing this? We were doing this by sitting on its head, a blessing that God has endowed us with. We've always believed that this country is very, very well endowed in so many ways. Human, natural, whatever resource you think of, we have it. But the best resource that God has blessed us with is the people. And the best endowment that God has blessed the Nigerian people is the diversity with which He created us. But the ability to harness that diversity for the collective good is what has been lacking, which has been what has been the bane of the problem of relationship in this country. The trust gap is widening by the day. Everybody is to thy tent, O Israel. Everybody is on to themselves. Nobody is thinking of the collective whole. Nobody is thinking of the next generation. It has reduced us into a country or a people that have become perpetual prisoners to nostalgia. We always have fond memories of yesterday. And this, which is what we are talking about now. Because we are talking about the Nigeria that we grew up into. If you tell your kids the kind of society that you grew up into, where people were not asking people what God they worshipped, what tribe they belonged to, your children in some cases would think this is tales by moonlight. But it truly happened. So the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, conscious of the responsibility that it owes as a relationship minder, as a perception manager, felt it is not an irredeemable situation. At the core of the problem was probably the breakdown of communication peaceful communication. most of the communication that has been taking place is violent communication, if you like. We all sit at our comfort zones and hurl invectives at one another, rather than come together, sit down, discuss what the issues are. How do we make progress in such a way that you benefit, I benefit, he benefits, that a win-win situation for all of us.
Yes.
It's all about relationships. So that is why we felt we needed to provide a platform for Nigerians to come together, discuss among themselves, not to find out what the problem is, because whoever you ask, you meet now, will tell you he knows or they know what the problems are. So it is a solution-based initiative. Okay, we know what the problems are. Let us come together and see how we can forge a common front towards finding a solution to the problem.
Yes, a solution-based initiative, that's what you call it. And the theme, we open conversation, we build trust, is apt at this moment in time. It all started in 12 July 2021. It's a process, and we're having the finale on Tuesday and Wednesday in collaboration with 70 organizations. What kind of body language did you have as we went to the 6th geopolitical zone and these 70 organizations that you felt Nigerians are ready for this change?
Well, thank you very much. It was quite very exciting. Sometimes also very apprehensive, because you were not sure, or we were not sure, how we were going to be received in some places. The kind of things we've been listening to on the television, radio, reading in the newspapers, people's expression of anger. Sometimes you will feel as if you can feel it, you can touch it, and so on. So while we were going round, it was an entirely different experience. We discovered that Nigerians love Nigeria. The issue is that they are frustrated that the nation is not working. Certain things that they would have expected to be resolved were not there. But ab initio, the bottom line is that they love Nigeria, they want to remain with Nigeria, and they want to do whatever is necessary to move Nigeria forward. Of course, when I say that Nigerians love Nigeria, it is not as if it's 100% thing. There are people who are driven by their own personal interest. But the overall, and in some cases we actually had to do some kind of survey to gauge opinion without being involved, and it was very, very exciting. We were in Kano on the 14th of October, and it was very revealing. People came out, they spoke, they expressed their minds, and they came out with critical issues that they thought, if well handled, would give direction. We moved from Kano to the South in Port Harcourt. The same thing happened. We moved from South to Jos for the North Central on the 16th of November. The same thing happened. We moved from there to Gombe for the Northeast. The same thing happened. We then moved to Enugu to see what will happen. And Enugu, Southeast people received us and expressed their concern. Then we rounded up in Lagos for the Southwest on the 2nd of December. And to conclude, we felt that we shouldn't leave out the 7th zone. So we had to have the 7th zone.
Which is?
The diaspora.
Oh.
The diaspora. So we had with the diaspora on the 19th of June, just 2 months ago. And it was very, very exciting. You know, listening to these different dynamics of the nation was very enlightening, deeply convincing, highly reassuring that what we are doing is the way to go. And out of it, we brought out 17 issues that were bothering the minds of Nigerians. That's how we designed the syndicate groupings that we have. We have 14 syndicates based on different sub-thematic areas. And these are the issues that cut across integration, reconciliation. What do we do about the economy to make it people-driven, based on productivity and growth? What do we do about how do we re-engage in security? How do we get people involved in security? Is peace a product or a process or an event? You know, we looked at so many issues. So we have identified these 17 thematic areas that Nigerians are worried about. And like the president said, the essence is not to just have a talk shop. Nation building is a statecraft. And in craftsmanship, you must be deliberate. It's not something you must think it through. We are not doing this just for 1 year. It's a 10-year development program that the institute under his leadership developed for 10 years. We'll keep engaging Nigerians. After this first one, the outcome will be in a big report. We have to get the services of a distinguished professor to chair the report drafting committee. And this man was one of those who have done so many things. I don't want to mention his name on air. But he has accepted. We have to get the services of an institute affiliated to one of the best universities in this country to preside or supervise the writing of this report. And more importantly, we want this report to be implementable. Not to come and give us the problems. We know the problems. But we now want to know these solutions. So we are bringing experts from different parts of this country. Those who have labored, more importantly, those who are passionate about seeing Nigeria move forward, to come and talk. Every syndicate has 3 speakers, and we want to listen to them. And we have brought in the best people to rapporteur for each of the syndicates, just to make sure that nothing is lost. We are deploying technology to cover everything so that they will go back and then look at these things and make sure that we have the best of report that will be implemented at local government, at state, at federal. That's why we are partnering. Out of these 70 organizations, we have government agencies, we have civil society organizations, we have labor union, we have students, we have youth, we have women, we have professional groups. Everybody is bringing what he can offer to ensure that at the end of the day, we have the best. But more importantly, we are developing a citizens' charter. Because we discovered that, yes, we have our constitution. But what is it that makes me want to die for Nigeria? Do I have a charter? Do the citizens have a charter? We don't have a charter as a people. So we are hoping that one of the outcomes, major outcomes indeed, of this summit is to develop a citizens' charter that will henceforth begin to guide us. And I'm delighted that organizations like Algon at the grassroots are working with us, and so on and so forth. So we have thought through this very carefully because we are professionals. And I think it's a right time for professionals to begin to get engaged in nation building and governance, in leadership and governance. Not just to be in our executive offices. No! We have to bring in, and you let me stop, he's giving me a sign.
Because still from your smile, you really enjoy what you're doing.
Thank God you've seen the signal anyway. Congratulations, NIPR. And of course, congratulations for that's your project. It's really moving on a very fast lane and then making the impact. It's so similar as it's the social contract between Nigeria and Nigerians that you are looking at. It's so similar as also the Nigerians are passionate about this your approach, given where you've gone to, and then what you really want to put on the table for Nigerians this time around, the citizens. And who exactly are you going to call? Now you've talked to everybody else. You're in all the zones. You are even outside Nigeria because you took diaspora. Then who else are you going to call?
We are going to call ourselves. Once again, what we did in the beginning was to go to those individual zones.
Right.
Let's have aggregate opinions that emanate from there.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were in Enugu, and I want to tell you one interesting thing that happened in Enugu.
Go ahead.
When I told, you were there, when I told some of the kids there that there used to be a time in Nigeria in which a certain Malam Altine contested an election for the mayoralty of Enugu against other Igbos, and Igbos in Enugu voted him against other Igbos. They didn't want to believe it until it was corroborated by the elders that were there.
That's true.
And they all clapped, they screamed, and we all resolved there that Nigeria's problem was not irretrievable. I mean, all you needed to do was retrace your step, ask yourself the necessary, even if difficult question: where did I miss it? What went wrong? If it happened in those days, we are supposed to be progressing. And I told them that not just in the 50s about an Altini, in Kaduna State, where I come from, as recently as 1999, people of Kaduna South local government, which is where I come from, voted for an Igbo man to represent them at the Kaduna State House of Assembly. So it is not a century-old development that we can easily forget. So we can use those things. We are trying to use those things to galvanize people. But what we want to do in Abuja now is for all of those zones, the 6 geopolitical zones and the 7th zone, like he said, to come together, and each one presents their report here, and then we take it up from there. We see we're providing a very large port that we're going to use we are servicing as chefs now to ensure all the reports are going to be the condiments.
Yes.
We are going to have to come out of the myriads, out of the diverse opinions that we have. We want to come up with a national opinion.
Okay.
Like the Citizens Charter. Can you go deeper into it briefly?
Well, I don't know if I can do better than he has said about the Citizens Charter. All it talks about is to put us on a platform whereby we'll be continuously asking ourselves the relevant questions. Why am I supposed to die for Nigeria? Yes, I'm supposed to die for Nigeria. Why am I supposed to do that? What is it for me to do to ensure that I bequeath a better Nigeria than the one that I inherited? These are part of the essence of the Citizens Charter, because progressive societies all over the world are built in such a way that every generation works very hard to ensure that they bequeath a better society than the one that they inherited. But like I said earlier on, ours is a perpetual nostalgia. Reminiscing about yesterday. So the essence of the Citizens Charter is to put us on a platform, so that we put a scale. Are we doing the right thing? Do we have the capacity to self-critique, criticize ourselves, ask ourselves why we are going wrong and try to correct it? We want to get out of our comfort zones, actually. I think we have been too comfortable there, and the comfort is taking us...
Thinking everything is okay. And we can go...
Well, maybe telling ourselves lies and believing it.
Everything is okay. Mr. Ike, they say a people make a nation. Let's retrace ourselves back. I remember growing up in Maiduguri, once it's Maghrib, that's time for the Maghrib prayer. Everybody comes out with his dish, on the road with mats, and you're just passing by. They'll tell you Bismillah, without knowing you, without knowing anything about you. You sit down there, you eat, and you move on. We had a bit of that era, but this generation have no idea at all what went down some 30 or 40 years ago. Are they part? Have you brought them into this summit that you're talking about to enlighten them that Nigeria is still there? It is the people in it that are causing most of the problems we have.
Oh yes, thank you for that question. In the course of coming up with this strategy, like the president said, we engaged on a research, and part of the outcomes of this research is that Nigeria is divided along 4 lines. Unlike what people assume, that it is just to, religion and ethnicity. No. We are divided along biological lines. What do we mean? We discovered that the young ones are fighting the elders, and they're saying, go home. You have ruined our nation. Go home. The elders are saying, you don't have experience, you know nothing. Look at the young ones who have given opportunity for leadership. They crashed. So when we discovered that, we then came up with a strategy that what is required is collaborative engagement. Take advantage of the wisdom, the experience, and the network of the elders. Take advantage of the energy, the creativity of the young people, and then have the two work together. So in designing the summit, in terms of content, development, and then speakers, we brought in everybody. So you have the likes of Chief Audu Obe, you have the likes of Professor Anya O. Anya, you have the likes of such people. Then you have the JJ Amojuwas, you have the Ojus, you have the Christianas, who is the president of Female Students Association of Nigeria. And then you have other young people. You know, that process of engagement, elders sitting with young people, exchanging views, interacting, is very healing. That is one of the processes of reconciliation. And that's what we need in this country. So we want to give the youth the opportunity that you can lead, but you need to be guided on how to lead, so that you don't also throw what you think that you have.
The baby with the bathwater.
There must be a way to handle. You cannot do without elders. Nations that don't have elders are in tatters.
And maybe I assure the elders too on the other side that there is an upcoming generation that is very willing and ready to take up.
Exactly, and we should give them a chance. You know, this book by Ayekwama, I love that book, and I love the title.
Beautiful ones.
The beautiful ones are not yet born. But you see, the beautiful ones cannot be born because the ugly ones have refused to die. That's it. So long as the ugly ones refuse to die, the beautiful ones are not prepared to come. So there has to be engagement.
So what is the
right, finally, as you know, Ike talked about, you want to come up with a report that's talking about the aftermath of the summit, what next after that, a report that is implementable. Reports are there in this country, beautiful ones, huge ones, fine ones, timely ones, but not implemented.
Yes.
But he said you want to come up with a report that is implementable. How different would that report be? And how implementable would it be?
Okay.
In 1 minute, please.
Okay, I'll do it in 50 seconds.
Okay, good.
Two things. One, we make sure that this effort has received the buy-in of virtually all the stakeholders that we have mentioned. Maybe the problem of other reports was that they were the products of programs that were designed maybe to buy time. There are some other ulterior motives for them. But in this, there was none. It is just passion about Nigeria. Two, he did mention of the fact that it is not a one-off thing. We are not just coming here next week and when we disperse, it goes back into the shelves. No, it is a 10-year plan that we have, that we intend for the institute to ensure that it harasses, it coerces, it cajoles, it continues to prick the conscience of the government to ensure that whatever it is we come up with, it remains at the front burner of discussion in the country. And one last thing is that we have tried to engage virtually everybody, governments, all the tiers of government and the tiers and levels of government, federal, state, local, executive, judiciary. Judiciary is largely out of it, but legislature. You know, there are some of the problems in this country that actually require attitudinal change. There are those that are only asking for some executive action. There are those that require legislative action. Yeah. So we are engaging.
I'm going beyond 50 seconds.
Well, I've not yet gone 60. So we are engaging all of those things so that we remain at the front burner. I wish we had more time. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mutaz Surajo, President and Chairman, Chairman of Council, Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. It's a pleasure. I wish you all the best. And some, gratitude goes to Dr. Ike Meleku, Chairman, NIPR National Summit Committee. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
And wish you all the best.
I forgot to tell you that NTA too is a partner in this thing.
Oh yeah.
That's why we're here.
Very big partner. And sincerely, we are so grateful to the NTA. If you quantify what NTA has done for the nation through this engagement in being involved in Citizen Summit is a lot. And we really, really appreciate the NTA and other media organizations that have risen to support this.
You've always been there. We'll keep being there for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And a very big thank you to you out there for being part of this discussion this morning. It's Good Morning Nigeria, and we're going to really come back again next week with a new package of it. Until then, I'm Yusuf Adabus. Have a great weekend.
And I'm Juma Yusuf. Thanks for watching. Have a great week. Bye.